Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. In this podcast episode, we interview Brian Bates, who owns and operates Bear Creek Organic Farm in Petoskey, Michigan, with his wife, Ann. Brian is passionate about small-scale finances, making a living doing what you love, and savvy marketing. In this interview, which is a long interview, I think it's at least an hour and a half, we covered all sorts of topics. Everything from, farm finance and why Brian's favorite tool is a calculator, his advice for brand new farmers, which is figure out your marketing first before you, spend money on anything on your farm. Their decision to actually use LED lighting for winter microgreens production, which I found fascinating, and we dived into that in detail. We also talked about, how they split responsibilities on the farm between him and his wife, and, why they want to pay and what they want to pay farm employees for a living wage. So it's a great interview. I highly enjoyed spending the time with Brian. He's someone I've known for a long time now, and definitely looked up to as someone who's blazing the trail of the next generation of farmers in the community, and I know you're going to enjoy this interview. Just a quick heads up. In this episode, our guest gets quite passionate and uses some colorful language, aka swearing. So just in case you have this blaring from speakers with sensitive ears around, you might want to put on some headphones or listen at another time. Welcome to the podcast, Brian.
How are you doing? Good to be here.
Great. Could you give us a little bit more background of, how you got started in farming?
Yeah, sure. I wanted to save the world, and like any good wide-eyed freshman college student, I thought that was an important thing to work on. Okay. And after exhausting a number of ways that I wasn't going to do that, I landed in the realm of food and agriculture, and just sort of took that to maybe its logical conclusion, which is where I am now.
Now, you're really involved in your community as well. So I think, that obviously is a natural outpouring of that wanting to save the world.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting because sort of the community we work and farm in now is not the community that my wife or I grew up in. So I think in some ways in this particular environment, the farm came first and the community engagement came second. Even though the two go hand in hand, it was sort of through the farm we met so many people who also cared, and at farmers market, you just meet all these members of your community. And so I think the engagement part of things was something that we always had in us. And just as we sort of developed this sort of community-based business, we ended up becoming progressively more and more involved.
Yes. Yeah. So when did Bear Creek Farm start?
Yeah. I mean, as an idea, 2012. As a property, we started construction 2013, and our first year of sales was 2014.
Gotcha. Okay. And so what kind of production do you guys now focus on the farm?
Yeah. So our original vision was to have a homestead that was going to focus on garlic, greens, and honey. We were thinking of having like horses and bees and off-grid and all this wild stuff. In some ways, we had to get financing through Farm Service Agency, and we had to apply for one of their beginning farmer microloans. And we had to justify each thing that we were going to get with the money. And asking for money has a funny way of filtering out some of the fun ideas that are bad ideas for business. so we ditched the horses and some of the more exotic things, and ended up getting, financing for a greenhouse, a tractor, and some beekeeping equipment. And that was just right. I mean, that really sort of kicked things off. And I think those were good investments. And so now our focus is definitely garlic, greens, and honey, but maybe not quite in that order. It's greens, tomatoes, garlic, honey.
Okay. Okay.
It's definitely become a bit of a salad farm. We have a lot of greens, microgreens, leafy greens, baby greens, and then tomatoes is our next biggest sort of crop, followed by garlic, a small amount of cucumbers, and then we sell a lot of plants, like herb, living herb plants and spring transplants. So plants have become another part of our business as well.
So you don't do any, let's say, baby roots, or there's just a very, very small part of what you do?
Only root we grow is garlic.
Okay. All right. Well, that simplifies things.
Yeah, we're not roots. We're not, the deal is, and we're on a small land base. We have a lot of land, but we focused on a small land base. So aside from the greens, we're not really growing what I consider like one and done crops. So we're not growing heading crops like cabbages or broccolis or things like that. We're growing, fruiting crops that we're picking a lot, like the tomatoes and cucumbers. And then the lettuce is sort of its own rotation, but it's obviously a lot faster than some of those one and done brassicas and storage crops, things of that nature.
Now, was that a gradual decision, or did you start that from the beginning and you just said, I'm not going to be interested in these crops?
Great question, and one that I think is really important to think about how we sort of started our business. One of the things that we knew when we started where we started, and I should mention that our farm is in Petoskey, Michigan, which is in the far northern reaches of the lower peninsula of Michigan. So if Michigan is shaped like a mitten, we're at the fingernail. So because of that, and because of our small community, and we knew we were new starting our farm, there were several existing farms in our area that were by and large CSA market farms, and they all grew a number of root crops, largely because of our, snowy winters and cold climate and trying to extend the season. And so most season extension here tended to be focused on the storage end of things. And so we really wanted to build a market for ourselves and not step on any toes. Yeah. And so to do that, we ended up finding ourselves in this niche of emphasizing the sort of ultra perishable greens and plants and things of that nature that weren't as broadly covered by these really diverse CSA farms. And we also knew we did not want to have a CSA. So once we knew we didn't want to have a CSA, it was pretty easy to start making cuts and focusing on things that would sort of jive together.
No, that is powerful right there. And I think the one thing that so many farmers don't do as they're getting started or even as they're growing their farm is step back and think and plan.
Yeah, and I'd like to, we joke all the time about the shape and form that our farm has taken, now entering our 6th season is so different than what we imagined at first. And at the same time, it's really not. We knew what crops we were going to avoid. We had a rough idea of what crops we were going to emphasize, but we needed to make sure the numbers added up on everything that we did no matter what. So we've been pretty ruthless in cutting crops that aren't paying the bills and emphasizing crops that are doing better, and then trying to make sure that the market, that our production matches the market demand. Yeah. So you're a big numbers person then. You got it.
Yeah. And I remember when we met at the Frozen Ground, that was kind of the original reason you reached out and said, hey, I want to come and I've got all the numbers. And so Sandy and I said, if you got the numbers, you can come. So
yeah, one of the things I tell beginning farmers, and I'm still a beginning farmer, right? But when we have new farmers who reach out to us or talk to us on social media or visit the farm or whatever, just somebody who's a little bit more beginning than we are. One of the things that I'm always sort of telling them is, if farming is sort of your dream job, and I think in many ways it's my dream job, it checks a lot of boxes for me on a personal level. But if that's sort of your dream job and that's sort of the goal, then you need to be at least enough of a numbers person to let you get to hold on to your job. So I'm not saying that you need to fall in love with spreadsheets, because I've seen plenty of farm plans that are perfect on paper and then don't pan out, in the field. But it's important that there are some key numbers that let you know that what you're doing has a chance and has a future. And if those numbers are what let me keep my job, then I am absolutely going to be a numbers person, because that's what lets me keep my job. It's the job security that I crave for the dream job. And I'm afraid that if I take my eyes off that, then I'm going to put myself out of a job. So I really want to make sure that, we work hard enough as it is. I want to make sure that we're working hard towards something that's productive and profitable, because we bring enough passion, but it's the productiveness and profitability that you need to make sure is there too.
Yeah, absolutely. To kind of dig a little deeper there, you've talked about, keeping that job. Let's talk a little about sustainability. What does sustainable agriculture, and then more specifically a sustainable farm, mean to you?
Well, I just sort of touched on it, which is if you can't pay your bills, that's the first tenet of sustainability. Like if you don't have enough money to be in business next year, you've missed the mark. And I don't suggest that that's intentional when that happens, but I think many of us, and myself very much included, tend to view sustainability as like getting rid of maybe plastic bags at market, or putting up solar panels, or looking for greener ways to do things, or being certified organic. And all of those are things that we've done. There's no doubt about it. We've added solar panels and done biodegradable bags. These are all things that we've done, but those are just things.
Yeah.
And none of those things matter if you're not producing a product that people want, that they're paying the price you're charging for it and showing up on a consistent basis. So if we don't focus on our customers, then all that other stuff doesn't matter. And I think millennials get a reputation for running these sort of like value-based businesses or mission-driven businesses or whatever you want to call it. And I think that's all fine and good. And I think it's important. I think that's where a lot of places have missed the mark, is they've missed that sort of soul and mission and purpose behind what they do. But, when people talk about the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit, it's not like they were trying to save the planet first and then they realized they need to be profitable. And the triple bottom line originated because places were making so much stupid money, they needed to find something else to care about. They needed to just not execute just for the sake of profit. So I think, then you add to take care of the people and take care of the planet. And then in a broad sense, those things can help build the profits. But I think sustainability first and foremost is having enough money to operate tomorrow and next week and next month and next year and hopefully for the next decade and so on after that. So I think the financial sustainability is really important. And I should clarify too that if that means that your financial sustainability is that you have a full-time job off the farm and you run the farm in all your weekend time and your nights and weekends, that's another way of being financially sustainable. I don't mean to suggest everyone needs to drop the job and they're less of a farmer if they don't. I just think that understanding that it's going to be a lot of work and life goes on regardless. If you have a family or a spouse or, you just want to live the life you've imagined, you can't like sign your down payment with vegetables. You need to bring money to the table to make those things happen. You can't just barter for health insurance with, carrots. So yeah, it's great to be surrounded by healthy food, but there are lots of things in our life that operate with money. And I think whatever each person's way of making that happen is, I think that's the first tenet of sustainability is making sure that you're not, going to bed hungry and you have a plan for next week. But I think, that doesn't have to consume you, but with that sort of taken care of, I think the other key part about sustainability is yourself or yourself and your partner or whatever, but like that sort of self-care, that making sure that you're not going to bed exhausted and waking up tired. That's not sustainable either. So I think there's another element of sustainability that has nothing to do with the planet, but not just your people like staff, but like your people like you. You got to look out for number one. And we've said that from the beginning is you got to look out for number one. And that doesn't mean that, we're paying ourselves first. Lord knows we pay our employees before we pay ourselves. But it just means that you're not losing sight of you're putting a ton of effort into everything that you're doing. And you want to make sure that you're fairly compensated in either quality of life or finances or happiness or fulfillment. But you need to make sure that you're being fulfilled too. And I think if you can take care of yourself and take care of your finances, then a lot of the other things tend to fall into place. But it's not sustainable if you're in an unsecure position or if your finances are unsecure.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And one thing I've really kind of dialed in lately is this whole mindset of abundance versus scarcity. And, when you are making enough money to pay everything, you can very easily move into that abundant state. Whereas if you're always struggling, as you said, with that financial stability, that means you're in this very vulnerable scarcity state, which means that you're making, frequently I see people make very bad decisions there.
Bad decisions, and they project it. Some of us may think that we have better poker faces than we have. I certainly don't have one, but it's something. We live in this sort of hyper-mediated world with all the social media and farms sharing stuff on Instagram and Facebook, and that's how we interact with a lot of other farmers on a daily basis and our customers too. But, it gets to a point where we've been on both sides of that screen or that phone from a position of abundance and a position of scarcity. And in each of those moments, we felt like we were acting rationally. But I can tell you with the benefit of hindsight and watching others, share their own stories, we can start to see what are sort of pleas from desperation versus, genuine marketing. Customers can sort of see when somebody use like CSA membership as an example. We don't have a CSA, but you see a lot of people do the push for, CSA membership. And you can sort of tell when somebody just has a thriving CSA and they say, hey, look, we've got a ton of happy CSA customers. We would love to have you join us. And that might almost come across as too sort of cocky. Let's say that's on the abundant side of things. But then the flip side is people who say, listen, people, we're trying to save the world. You said you wanted us to do this, and now here we are doing it, and we really need you to sign up for it because we're doing what you told us you wanted us to do and really need you to do it. And people see through that too. Like that comes across as desperate. And so I think how we feel, I notice farmers can be so much more catty sometimes in the shoulder seasons when money isn't so great. And then in the summer, everyone's jovial and practically singing Kumbaya at farmers market when they're all setting up, But I think it's like when a market is good, everyone's super happy and hanging out. And then sometimes when times are not, they get real nitpicky about things. It's not very becoming. And I think that scarcity and abundance, just understanding where you are on that continuum at any given moment and how it may be sort of influencing your outward appearance or disposition. I think it's really important to keep that in mind because customers aren't stupid. And if we can see it from 1,000 miles away on Instagram, then certainly customers in your neighborhood or people you're interacting with market with, they can see it too. So I think that, I think that matters. It does.
Let's talk a little bit about your recyclables because you've made a big push, packaging and all that. How has that journey gone? Because I'm sure it hasn't been easy, going through the entire process.
We run a customer-driven farm. We're unapologetic about that. If there's a crop that we like but people don't buy, we don't keep growing it. And so if there's something people want more of, but we think it's a lot of work, but we can figure out a way to make the work a little bit less and keep delivering it, then we're going to figure out a way to do that. And so this really sort of obsessive customer focus, one of the ultimate sort of nexus points of that is packaging. And it's really interesting because packaging brings out a lot of strong opinions from like a vocal minority, and then the rest of people don't seem to give a crap. And so I think we've had to be careful to not risk practically borrowing money for the most sustainable packaging that's going to save the world, and also meeting customer expectations with a price point on the shelf that they can afford for their family. So we sell a lot of product to retailers, like to independent grocery stores and things like that. And the vast majority of that product is in a package. And there are several reasons for that. But the key thing is we thought it was really important initially to have the most sustainable packaging. I'm talking 100% post-consumer, recycled content, made in the USA, one state away, yada, yada, yada. That was great. And those prices for that packaging kept going up and up and up. And to the point where it was just like, well, this is getting out of hand. It's almost basically fiscally irresponsible for us to continue using this packaging because yes, people would like us to use good packaging, but they would probably rather us stay in business first. So that was a really challenging sort of internal conversation. One of the other things we realized was more people complained about the ease or difficulty of opening our packaging than what the heck it was made of, right? So here we were thinking we were doing this great thing, getting this recycled packaging, but one of our early packaging suppliers that we were using, it was a little, I still to this day don't think it was that difficult, but we do tend to sell to a lot of people who are maybe older than me, certainly, maybe older than 50 in many cases, older than 60. And so they were always complaining about the challenge of opening the packaging, like with their fingers. It was one of those tamper-evident clamshells that had like a tear seal to it or whatever. And in my wildest dreams, I never thought that investing in the safest, localist, most recycled, most tamper-evident, award-winning packaging was all just going to be moot when somebody was like, my fingers hurt.
Yeah.
And so like that was really disheartening because we spent a ton of time trying to find the one that we thought checked all the boxes and we were spending a fortune to do it. And they were like, I'd just rather you have like the ones that they sell sandwiches in. So it was just like this really challenging dynamic. And so, so do we pay more for the recycled stuff? For sure. But we're also trying to listen to that customer perception and make sure that when we look at a product or a packaging option, it's not just what the package itself, what it's comprised of, but also its usability, how it sits on the shelf, can it stack, does it nest, do the produce department's existing displays receive this shape and style? I mean, there ends up being a lot to the physical container. And then, by the way, nothing matters if the product inside is crap. So just making sure that like we want to be putting a tuxedo on a great product, not putting a tuxedo on a pile of junk. So it's just making sure that it's a nice package, nice branded logo and label on the front, splash of color, make it look like a professional product, but also make sure that it tastes good too.
Yeah. Absolutely. That is great. There's a lot of things there I never thought of, but when you come back to it, the customer in this day and age is all about convenience. That's the number one thing that they want.
They want convenience. I may have said this before, but this is so true, and it comes up time and time again. Some of our customers just wish we wouldn't use plastic at all. Mm-hmm. Some of our customers wish we wouldn't put it in rigid plastic clamshells at the store. Some of our customers wish that we didn't sell things in smaller plastic bags. And those customers are vocal, and unfortunately, they're in the minority. And when we switched our retail packaging from bags to rigid, the sales went up a lot. And I don't mean just a small amount, they went up more than doubled. And not only did they more than double, the pricing actually went up because we needed to account for the more expensive packaging. So it was clear that it needed to sort of look like a duck, quack like a duck, just like the national brands. And this is the thing that we find ourselves wrestling with all the time. If they don't purchase our local product, what is that same customer going to purchase? Salad in a clamshell. So one of the things we've wrestled with is why should we, who are already battling many other challenges that, larger businesses can easily sort of absorb, why should we try to solve something else that they haven't even solved, right? Like if the alternative 9 times out of 10 and 365 days out of the year is another rigid container from Earthbound or Taylor Organics or Organic Girl or whatever, if that's the alternative, then why should we change everything we do when that's already what consumers are used to purchasing? And so I'm not saying that the world is going to forever use single-use plastic. I can't wait until the status quo and the cultural norms adjust. But I think of have you ever seen the boxed water? Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. How often do you see boxed water as the first offering of water in any time when you need water?
I don't think I've ever seen that.
It's not very frequent. And boxed water gets rid of the plastic. It's recyclable. It solves a lot of things, but it's not how consumers are used to getting it. And so I think education is expensive. And right now we're just in the game of trying to deliver a superior product, thousands of miles closer, certified organic, that's fresh, tastes great, and looks good. And with recycled packaging in the process. But we can't solve every problem every time with everything. And so I try to relay to consumers if they're really concerned about it. And many of them genuinely are. Yeah. There's a lot of things that went into this product more than the packaging. And you should find solace in the fact that it traveled fewer miles and we produced it with care and we pay our workers a living wage. And there's a lot of other things that go into this than just its final container.
Absolutely. There's so many levels of sustainability or, recycling around that, the end packaging, even though that's what they see, isn't the end all be all.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other disclaimer, our county, we're incredibly fortunate, has a phenomenal recycling program. Even amidst all the national news about China doesn't take our recyclables, our county in Michigan has focused on having primarily Michigan and Midwest companies purchasing all their plastics because they were concerned about the Chinese opportunity not being available forever. So our county for rigid plastics, 95% of rigid plastics that are recycled in our county are turned into a new product, within the state or within adjacent states. And so that's a really, really high recapture rate. And so if it was a different scenario, I might feel differently about the matter, but I do believe, all things operate local first. And so because we have this great municipal recycling program, I feel comfortable knowing that by using post-consumer recycled product and then having it get recycled again, we are doing better than using virgin plastic that goes into the landfill. In many ways, our plastic is at least triple use because it was used once, it's being used now, and it'll get used again. And that's 3 times better than single use.
Absolutely. I saw in a recent picture that you're using lights in the greenhouse, the LED type. Is that for extension of the day? How's that working for you?
Yeah, so those lights, people love those lights. They're super cool and purple. Looks like a discotheque's going on in the middle of winter. So those lights are for increasing the rate of growth of our microgreens production in the wintertime. Once we hit sort of March 1st, those lights go off. And once we get into the second half of October, the lights go on. The rest of the time, they're not on. But what we're trying to do is increase the rate of growth. So we grew microgreens through the winter in a greenhouse with no lights. And even heating it the rate of growth slowed down to a crawl. They're just, even when there was light, it wasn't that intense. We're north of 45 degrees latitude.
Correct.
So we're pretty far north. So that was the hope. And then we sort of learned that when you add the light, you need to make sure there's enough heat so they can be metabolizing the whole time there is light. So it's sort of been this back and forth of, at first light was our limiting factor. Then we added lights. Then it was like, there's lights, but it's still kind of chilly in here. So then we added heat because heat was the limiting factor. And then that seemed to be a better equilibrium. And we trialed just 20% of our greenhouse with lights for the first 2 years. And then we thought, man, these are working really well. Cost has come down a little bit over the last couple of years. Let's fill up the whole greenhouse. So yeah, this year we added 24 more fixtures. So we've got 30 by 72, whatever that is, 2,100 square feet. That's covered with these LED grow lights.
Now, and so you're just using them for the microgreens. And so what has that taken your winter grow time from to? Yeah,
well, like I said, it's a mix between the heat and the light. So when we kept it as cool as we were keeping it, which is maybe like 45, 50 degrees, because we didn't want to break the bank on propane, adding the lights made things grow like, I'm going to say maybe 10% faster. So nothing dramatic, but one of the immediate benefits was the leaf vigor was much improved. So like some of those greens in the winter can look pretty anemic because they're stretching for light.
Exactly.
So they're already more tender than they would be outside anyways. And so it was maybe 10% faster at how much it grew, but our harvestable yield per flat went up maybe 25 to 30% because of weight. So I'm talking just like, say you seed 100 arugula seeds, let's just say. I mean, obviously it's more than that. Let's say you seed 100 arugula seeds, and then out of that 100 arugula seeds, you get 200 arugula cotyledons. But all those cotyledons are sort of X in thickness. Well, by adding the lights, all those cotyledons, the same 200 cotyledons, become like 2X in thickness. And so by becoming more vigorous, you get more weight, and we sell it by weight, so that's more money. But it also has a better shelf life because it's not this flimsy little wimpy green. It's got more sort of strength to it and vigor. So that was an immediate benefit that we never even anticipated. But admittedly, we were disappointed and only increasing the growth rate by 10%. We were hoping it would be, twice as fast. So we talked with the company, and we got our lights from Luma Grow out of California. And so we talked to them, and they said, well, what temperature are you keeping it at? And we told them, and they were like, that's pretty cold. We have a lot of growers in sort of more professional greenhouses that are keeping them in the 60s and 70s. And they seem to see things grow a lot faster. And I was like, okay, but we're not made of money, but we'll give it a try. And so the next winter, we upped the temperature from 45 to 55 as the lowest, nighttime temperature. And upping it to 55 plus the lights, things were probably growing like 30% faster. This last year, we covered the whole greenhouse with lights and then kept it to 65. And everything was about twice as fast as it was in the previous winter, or put another way, maybe only 2 to 4 days slower than what it is in the summer.
Oh, wow.
We dramatically increased our production this last winter without increasing our production area. And that was cool. You just think about those cycle times, how long something is spending in one spot.
Oh, yeah.
You pay the same no matter what. So we were just trying to cycle through as many greens as possible. So we're definitely cranking out more product in the same area with that light heat in tandem.
Fascinating. Yeah, I know when we were doing microgreens in the winter, we had it as high of I think a 35-day cycle time. So so being able to bring that down, in the summer, wow, that would be.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, this winter, a lot of the ones that in the summer are sort of in that like 11 to 15 day window. This winter, they were like 13 to 18 days, which previously that would have been, 2X. So definitely a big improvement, but not for the faint of heart, right? I tell growers this all the time. Make sure you have an efficient greenhouse. Make sure, you're ready for the lights. The thing with LED lights is they are supposed to be hung much higher than other grow lights. So, these fixtures, we have the lowest they want you hanging them is 6 feet above it. And it's the same production intensity from 6 to 12 feet for this fixture. So if we had them 12 feet up, we'd be covering a much wider area with fewer fixtures. So we're actually planning to build a new greenhouse this year. And one of our main goals is to have it be a taller structure so that we're covering more area with those lights. Because our light investment is almost $20,000. We have more money into the lights than we do into the greenhouse.
Yes. Yeah, I know how much those things cost. So yeah, very interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating. We've been playing here ourselves with just small scale LED for transplant production. And what I found is there's really no research out there on the transplant aspect. Everyone's done, full grow out, but as let's say you're trying to produce, a 6-week-old tomato transplant, there's very little research that at least I can find on the exact amount of light you need and that sort of thing for producing that.
Yeah, I mean, like I tell anybody, you can just see this with anything. The research follows the money. So most of the early lighting research was in the cannabis industry, and we've directly benefited from that. That's a large reason the cost of the units has gone down over the last several years. But then the next biggest industry after that tends to be floriculture, where you're trying to get things to bud when they might not otherwise do so. And so we're pretty fortunate in Michigan to have a couple of researchers at Michigan State who are basically the sort of like consumer reports for LED grow lights. So they have a standard test that they run, and every new product that enters the market, they do their independent testing and verification of the claims they're making, and then talk about the potential uses. And I've really enjoyed seeing I should say I've partially enjoyed it. The shame is when we got our fixtures, they were some of the best ones on the market. 2 years later, there's ones that are, 3 times better. So it's the production curve. It's kind of like the early days of flat screen TVs. Like they're getting a lot better really quickly. But yeah, you're right. I mean, not a lot on transplant production, because transplant production isn't where all the money is. Most people that are doing a huge amount of transplants, they just do that in the deep south or California, and then they ship them to wherever they need to go. This sort of a hyper-local production model isn't the main focus of this technology, and so the research doesn't tend to follow that. One thing I will say about the LED grow lights, especially with transplant production and other things, is sometimes you can give them too much light. And so most small farms, ourselves included, have many different crops in the greenhouse at any given time. All of them respond to light and photo periods the same way. And so that is something that I do think people need to keep in mind, is you can sometimes watch leaves do things you haven't seen them do before because they might be light stressed. Or we've seen some transplants that are started early grow shorter, like squatter, because they're not reaching for the low sunlight of the early spring. They have plenty of light, and so you end up with shorter plants. So there's some things that change a little bit with the lights, but I think you need to make sure you have a business model that supports the investment, because it's an expensive investment. And even with the LED grow lights, it's an expensive operation cost. So it's the cheapest of all the lights that are available, but the sun is your best asset at all times.
Yep, absolutely. As a farmer, there are endless tasks to be done. How do you make sure to focus and tackle your most vital priorities each day?
Well, I'm a serial note maker at my desk right now, and I'm looking at 5 different shapes and styles of notes that are reminding me to do various things. But that's been fine for me. I send a lot of emails to myself. I send a lot of text messages to myself of things that I don't want to forget, particularly the night before when I'm thinking about what needs to happen tomorrow. But where we've run into trouble with that is we've now added a bit of a crew to our farm, and a Post-it note on Brian's desk doesn't help them very much. And so there's a couple different ways I could answer that question. But from a communication standpoint, we have a virtual to-do list that's hosted on the cloud, just on Google Drive. It's just a document on Google Drive. And it's on my computer. It's on the main pick list computer in the wash pack. And then every worker can access it on their phone, though some do and some don't. But it's shareable with their emails. And then that to-do list is what you call like an Eisenhower box, like one of those grids. So it's like important and urgent, not important, and just various things. And so I populate that from time to time. But I'll admit I'm not great at making lists for others, because if I'm there, I just know what needs to be done and I direct it. What I've been forced to do is, as their crew has grown and my off-farm engagements or deliveries or whatever have taken me off the farm more, I have to use this as a means of communicating all the time and get people sort of habituated to doing it. So I think that's sort of the communication of the task. But in terms of how we prioritize each day, I mean, customers first, sales first, right? So the most important task every day is to get the orders harvested and delivered, whatever it is, whatever pertains to getting the money is what we do first. So if that means we need to harvest everything, wash everything, then deliver everything, then that's what we're doing. And then if it's to seed more things, to have more things to harvest in the future, that's important too. And so within the day, we try to prioritize the tasks like, what are the things that stop things from dying? So watering the greenhouse, that basically always trumps all the other tasks, because if you don't do it, things die. But if you don't cultivate the field that morning, and if you stop cultivating to go water the greenhouse, that's a good decision, because you're keeping something alive and preventing it from dying versus just making something better. And so, yeah, we want to get to cultivation, but you could do cultivation in the afternoon. But right now you need to keep things alive. And so we sort of order it, sequentially from keeping things alive to what are things that would be nice to get done. But we also focus, I think every farmer does this intrinsically, but maybe not, but we tend to focus on the things that are most temperature sensitive. So on a harvest day, we're harvesting everything that's most temperature sensitive. We're getting the lettuces first, the microgreens first, and we'll get the dry things, the tomatoes and whatnot in the afternoon, just to sort of spread out the day. Because unlike a factory, which can schedule multiple shifts and it's always the same temperature and light level in the factory, we have to get a lot of work done, but we're still operating within the constraints of daylight that's available and temperature conditions.
Absolutely. So when you talk about that planning, do you tend to plan every evening for the next day? How do you set your week up? We
have a very consistent week. I like that. I'm like one of those people that subscribes to the sort of key habits that make you successful. You don't make any more decisions than you have to. So I wear the same thing every day. I have a very, very boring wardrobe. Not making a great I'm probably making a fashion statement. It's maybe not a wonderful fashion every day, but it's just things like that where we're not trying to make any more decisions than we need to. So we basically have a 4-day work week. Okay. Effectively. Now I'm working 7 days a week in different capacities, and some people come to the farm 5 days a week, but Mondays is always wet harvest day. And it's basically like everything that needs to be washed. We're harvesting, washing, packing in the morning, sometimes into the afternoon, and then harvesting dry things and then packing out things and getting all that stuff ready. And then Tuesday is a delivery day and all the farm chores. So Tuesday is delivery, and then cultivation, transplanting, what have you. Wednesday is the biggest harvest day. Start early, harvest, wash, pack, wet things all day, dry things in the afternoon. Thursday is the big delivery day, split up on deliveries, and then get all farm tasks done. And so those are like, it's just kind of like every other. And that's 52 weeks a year, right? We harvest 104 times a year for even just the microgreens. So we have this routine 52 weeks a year. And then Friday and Saturdays are market days. So in the summer, that means, 2 or 3 people are going to one market on Friday and 2 or 3 people are going to one market on Saturday. And then, usually we're leaving some people behind on the farm that are watering the greenhouses. Maybe that's the time to get caught up on like trellising tomatoes or transplanting. And then Saturday, it's just keep things alive. Sunday, it's just keep things alive and sort of relax. And so we tend to work, nobody's really exceeding 40 to 45 hours a week. So typically that looks like 4, 9-ish hour days, Monday through Thursday. And then some people work at 10 voluntarily on those days. And then Friday, we're trying to end by like, 1 or 2 o'clock, something like that, take off for the weekend. So it's a very, very, both of our markets are year round. Most of our wholesale accounts are year round. So even though the orders get smaller, we follow a very, very similar routine every day.
No, that's absolutely key. And that's one of the things I stress with, especially new farmers when they're starting to plan. And I said, you want to get as much planning as you can do in the wintertime so that during the season, all you're doing is going through the motions and you can spend your mental energy on working on the, when the pump breaks or the vehicle, they have to change something out, because otherwise you're just putting out fires all day long and you're mentally exhausted.
Yeah, it's crazy. You don't want to be in a position where you're putting out fires. You want to be in a position where you're sort of operating at sort of optimal capacity. So I sort of think of our work, this time of year as sort of spring training before season starts. Like we'll take more time to practice harvesting. Like truly like practice. We'll take time to practice transplanting. Yesterday We've got 2 new members of our team that have joined us. And so yesterday I had those 2 and myself, I try to work with them as much as I can. I had the 3 of us rearrange every single microgreen flat in the greenhouse. Now, that is a waste of time almost any time of year. But with intention, I was trying to get them to learn all the varieties of microgreens in their various stages of growth just by eye and without my help. Now, I'm there to confirm or deny, but they're supposed to put like things with like things. And when you have, if you've got green Mizuna microgreen, at any given time, there's green Mizuna microgreen in 4 stages on our tables because we seed twice a week. So you've got 2 weeks growing at any given time. And so you've got to find every stage of green Mizuna microgreen. And you got to be able to tell the difference between every stage of green arugula and every stage of green broccoli. And so that kind of activity, rearranging stuff in the greenhouse, that doesn't add value to the customers. That's a waste of time in the summer. But right now, with me there, with intention, it's a great opportunity to watch where the mistakes are made, talk them through little tricks I've learned to teach myself, just little things like that. So we do a lot of that this time of year. We have already, I should mention, I don't know when this will air, but it's March 26th. So we're talking the end of March going into the spring. Yeah. And all of our summer staff has started because I want to have them for ideally a month, but at least 2 weeks before we get busy. And I define getting busy as when the first spring mix harvest starts. And for us, that's typically the 3rd week of April. So I want all of our crew to be comfortable with where the tools are, where the wash pack is, how we label boxes, how we print out tags, what we do when we don't have anything to do, where things go, who to ask to find help. Make sure you use the walkie-talkies instead of walking to ask a question. I want to sort through all those things, right? You can't just show up to your first game of the season without ever having practiced. But I don't know why sometimes we expect, employees to be able to do that. So we try to do all this training in March and the early 2 weeks of April so that when it starts to get busier and busier and busier and busier, we got all that crap out of the way. And sure, we can't teach tomato trellising in March because there's no tomatoes in trellis. I get that. But for everything that is possible, everything in the wash pack, everything in the workshop, everything in the greenhouse, everything in the potting shed, everything in the hoop house, all those covered spaces that you can have year round, that's when we try to do the sort of spring training to get all this stuff learned. And we give them the lean farm. They have to read that book, but we give them these tools to try to get them sort of up to speed. We don't have an employee manual yet, I guess, but we're definitely trying to work with them when we have time. And so we do dry runs of the delivery routes with people who are going to be delivering. We go visit every place we're going to deliver in the summer when there's a lot of traffic on the road. We do it in the winter when we've got time. We can take the time to do that. So we really do a lot of that. And I'm trying to do it with them so that they sort of hear my thoughts on why we do these things. And then they can ask questions. And sometimes they ask great questions. And I'm like, I have no idea why we do it that way. I think we're going to change it when we get back because of what you just said. Like that, you're right. It makes no sense. So it's a two-way street. But that's really something we try to emphasize.
No, that is really good. I've never heard someone, articulate it that way, but I think it's so important that you're setting them up for success to make your full season work smoothly. I talked to a farmer once, really great farmer, but what she said was, she says, yeah, we refer to August as angry August because that's when everyone gets burnt down. Everyone starts, really to get crabby at each other. But if you can eliminate that because everyone's on the same page and you're just kind of coasting through the season because you've set yourself up for success in March, then I think your employees are going to, stick around. They're going to love farming. Even if they end up, leaving your farm, they're going to have this vision of what a farm should look like as a moving, breathing organism that's set up leanly and working properly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, sometimes I think we as farmers expect too much of employees. Farmers and artists and really just independent small business operators all have a lot in common in that so much of their business is in their head. And so it might seem logical to you. It might not even seem logical to your spouse. And you share a bed and half a brain and maybe children. But if it's not logical to them, then why would somebody who has just joined your team and only spends 40 hours a week with you be able to get what is years or decades of habit into their brain? right? That is no way to train somebody. And I think part of my real aggressiveness on this comes from our town and our community is a highly seasonal community. In the summer, the county population like triples. There's a lot of people that come up here for the lakes and it's cooler, things like that. But working in like a grocery store and in retail, as we were starting the farm, you watched these seasonal businesses. They weren't farms, okay? Mm-hmm. But they were a seasonal business where when it got busy, they needed more staff. But before it got busy, they didn't need staff. And so nobody called it Angry August, but August was about the time everybody hit their groove.
Yeah.
And so it was like, if you need everybody to be ready to go the first week of June, you can't be hiring those people the last week of May. You need to be hiring those people the last week of April so that you've got May to bond, to mesh, to gel, to learn, to work together, to find out what they're good at, what they're not good at, what their strengths are, where they might be the best fit. And so that when June 1st comes, there's rapport amongst the workers. They know each other's habits. We have more time to have lunch together and talk in the shoulder season to learn about each other and things, so that when it gets busy, we're not trying to navigate personalities that we've just learned in the thick of things. That's a horrible time to get to know anybody, right? I mean, you want to get to know your shipmates on a cruise when you're having a cocktail on the deck, not when it's stinking. So, not when you're in the lifeboat. So we're really trying to make sure that we get that sort of connection, all those soft things out of the way now. And out of the way makes it sound like it's something that needs to happen. We just try to let those things happen now, so that when it gets busy, I'm just like, I like you, I know you, get to work. Yeah. We all like each other. We all know each other. We really need to crank this out right now. We will talk later, but right now we just need to get it done. That way nobody's left feeling like, man, Brian's kind of a dick today. It's just like, okay, he must be serious, because at least I've got a couple weeks or a month of operating with him where he's been pretty laid back. So today just must be a busy day, and so we better shape up, because like we'll have the good times, but right now we need to get to work.
Absolutely. So we stand on the shoulders of giants, those who have gone before us. I've had mentors, you've had mentors. Tell me about one of those influential lessons that you learned from one of those mentors.
Well, I've benefited from a lot of good people to work for and to learn from in the workplace and family and otherwise. But in the exact vein of what we're talking about right now, I feel like I have to give a lot of credit to Paul and Sandy Arnold. And I know you and I have them in common, but it's all that I just said about like training the workers. That's not something that anybody told me how to do. But Paul said very early on that working with employees is a come along, not a go along. And that always stuck with me. This sense that when you're trying to get somebody worked into your crew, you say, come along, like we're going to go do this, and you're going to go do it with them, and you're going to go show them how to do it. It's all going to be you doing it with them. And it's not like, go along. Okay, so the field's over there, just over that hill, right past the strawberries. You'll see the hoop house. Once you get in there, open the door and start, pruning and ripping stuff out. And, call me on my cell phone if you have any issues. Right? Like that's not a recipe for success in terms of getting the work done right. But by the way, it's not a recipe for success for feeling respected as a worker. And so, one of my sort of guiding principles is just the sort of golden rule: treat others as you want to be treated. And I think that the come along, go along for me really, really captures that in a workplace dynamic, is that if you don't have time to show them what to do, then why should they give you the time to learn how to do it on their own? That's crazy. That is truly crazy. And so I think that's profound. I think there are people that have that philosophy and still have workers who dislike them, and that's fine. I don't think anything is just a cure-all, but I think that sort of sentiment shows that you're giving it the effort. The other sort of lesson that I've learned from Paul and Sandy is the importance of sticking it out, sort of doing the year-round markets, because that's what your customers want. They've just got a lot of great things that they've shared with me, just things like they're not just going to market to sell to customers, they're going to sell to friends. Right? Like, what a profound way of thinking about how you sell. When I talked earlier about selling and advocating from a position of desperation versus a position of abundance, you would market yourself very differently if you were trying to only sell to friends than if you were just trying to sell to customers. If you just view people as one more person who should want your product because obviously it's awesome, you made it, that's not going to let you connect in the same way. And truthfully, our customers started out as just customers, and many of them have become friends. And I think that's the best way for that to pan out. And whether they buy $3 or $35 a week, at a certain point, it's not about that. They're showing up, they're putting in the time, we're showing up, we're putting in the time. And, for our 2 regional markets, we're the only farm that goes to both 52 weeks a year. Mm-hmm. Do we have a full table all the time? No. Do we make tons of money every week? No. But we are there for our customers 52 weeks a year. So when all the other vendors show up in the spring, we're just saying, how are you? Haven't seen you since last week. And all the other vendors are saying, haven't seen you since last year. And I think that on a subconscious level, we tend to really reward those that put in the time in that relationship. And that's something that I also give a lot of credit to Paul and Sandy for conveying the importance of being there for your customers, as often as possible.
If you're looking to shave hours off your week and become a thriving farmer, you're going to want to head over to growingfarmers.com/free resources and download our free resource bundle. It contains ebooks on our profitable farm toolkit, increasing efficiency and safety in your washing shed, winter growing techniques, and our 30 farms to follow on Instagram. Now, if you haven't already followed us, we're Growing Farmers on Instagram. That's our handle. So head on over there and follow us. But you can also go to growingfarmers.com/free resources and download our free resource bundle today, and it will help you shave hours off your week and become more of a thriving farmer. If there was a magic reset button as it relates to starting your farm, what systems would you go back and put into place sooner rather than later, and why?
Well, I try not to live with a lot of regret, just in general, because sort of what's done is done. But, our farm's sort of an interesting beast in that we purchased fallow pasture and have built every bit of infrastructure from the driveway to the well to the buildings from the start. And so with that blank slate comes great responsibility, because on the one hand, I don't have to worry about like an inappropriately placed barn that used to house cows that I'm trying to turn into like a wash pack or a root cellar or something like that. But on the other hand, everything is from scratch. So if something doesn't work out down the line, like you got nobody to blame but yourself. So I think, so we've tried to be pretty conscious about things. I don't know. We put a lot of time into where we located the farm. And as the years have gone on, I realized just how important that has been. So a guy I was, like I said, I was working at a grocery store. We were starting the farm, getting everything going. And there was a guy who'd lived in this community for a long time, but as a transplant. So he had sort of some outside perspective, and he was more objective than maybe like the average lifelong resident. But we were looking at land in many ways in the outskirts of town or in other towns that was a little bit cheaper. And he just said to me basically something like, there's a reason all that property is for sale. And much of it has been for sale for the 30 years I've lived here. So don't think that just because it's for sale and you haven't seen it before, that it's the perfect location, because 30 years of people have already decided it's not. And I thought, damn. Because admittedly, there were some places that we thought, oh, this would be so cool. And sure, it's 20 minutes north of town, but just like people would come if we've got something cool going on. And he said something to me. He actually purchased land with some friends back to the land or whatever, that they were all going to sort of live on. And at various stages, some of them did and some of them didn't. But it was sort of like 30 minutes north of town kind of deal. And it was beautiful. I mean, it's God's country up there. It's rolling hills. It looks like a place where anything, you could make your dreams come true. But he said, the issue is not that it's not a good spot. The issue is that each time you forget something, you need to go grab groceries, some eggs, run into town, visit the bank, need to make deliveries, do anything like that. You're talking 30 minutes each way every single time. And every minute you're closer to town, you save 2 minutes every trip. That was something that resonated with me, because I grew up outside of a metropolitan area, and we spent an amazing amount of time in the car growing up. And you don't think about that a whole lot as a kid. I mean, you only know what you know. But I thought that is true. We had to wait in traffic to go to school. If it was a Sunday, we could get to school twice as quickly as we got to school on a weekday. So it obviously wasn't that far away, but it was twice as long on a weekday. And so there was something that sort of intrinsically, I had that firsthand experience of that sort of commute, but that was a density commute. And he was sort of like, this isn't a density commute. Like, it doesn't matter what happens. It'll always be, it could be Sunday and nobody on the road, or Monday and nobody on the road. and it's still 25 miles. Like it's always going to be 25 miles from town.
Yeah.
And that's not going to get any closer. And so he may not even remember telling me that. I mean, we were like stocking groceries, having this conversation. Okay. This wasn't like a wisdom consultation session of mistakes I've made and things I'd do in the future. We were probably just putting cereal on the shelf or something. But I thought, damn, that rules out a lot of property we were looking at. I mean, like almost all of it. And so we landed on a different piece of property that is 3 miles from town.
Nice.
7 minutes from any business downtown, 5 minutes before you're in downtown. There's 2 turns to do it. And I think, and sure, maybe in the summer when there's more tourists, it takes 9 minutes, right? But we're talking 9 minutes instead of 30 minutes, which means for every trip, we're saving 21 minutes twice, which is 42 minutes, which is almost an hour. And if you're making 1 trip a day, that's 5 hours in the work week. If you're making 2 trips, that's 10 hours in the work week. If you're doing that 52 weeks a year, you're talking about saving full work weeks worth of minutes and hours. And that's that power of, that sort of compounding behavioral and behaviors. And I think that was powerful in that way, for one. And for two, anytime, we don't have an on-farm market, but anytime we do a tour or an event or something like that on the farm, we're that much closer for the vast majority of the population. We're not trying to convince them to go 30 minutes away. We say, oh, it's just 5-10 minutes outside of town. And so I think little things like that. And by the way, like, lest we forget about the economics here, we live in a really low density county. So it's worth noting that, like, we probably paid $400 more per acre than that space 30 minutes out of town. So, like, it was expensive, but not like, we're not talking twice as much, not even half as much, really probably like 10 to 15% more. So that's one of those things I'm saying, like, yeah, sure, somebody could be listening saying, yeah, of course, who wouldn't want to live in Manhattan, but I'm stuck, I'm stuck in New Jersey. Like, it's not like that. I'm saying that maybe outside of town, land was $2,000 an acre and 30 minutes away, and 5 to 10 minutes away, it was $2,400 an acre. Like, it's a much, much, much smaller spread that we're discussing. So that's maybe not a reset button that I would hit, but it's something that sometimes I think we were so close to making decisions that would have not been that way. And almost weekly, we say to ourselves, like, Jesus, like, good thing we're this close to town. Now that we've got, a 9-month-old son, like, we gotta, like, run to the doctor because he's sick, and we're just like, oh, good thing we're close to town. Because it's not just, some people say I don't mind driving, and that's true. I love driving. I don't mind driving at all. But driving to drive is different than driving to get things done. And if you're driving to get things done, you want to be as efficient as possible in everything that you do, just like everything else that we do. And so that's where it's different. It's like, when you're driving for work, you don't want to be spending unnecessary amounts. I mean, if there's a way to get somewhere in 5 minutes, why would you take 15? That makes no sense. Then one other benefit there's been a lot of benefits that we never could have expected, but one other benefit I'll offer that I didn't know at first is, in talking with sort of other growers and other farms in this area and other communities, it's also been easier for us to secure workers, particularly part-time or shorter term workers, because we don't need to provide on-farm housing. Obviously, that would be great to provide on-farm housing. That's always a dream, is to be able to offer that. But, we've got the whole pool of anybody who's in town or in between semesters, or even just going to high school, wants to come out and work on the weekends, whatever it is, they just have to commute 5 to 10 minutes to get to the farm instead of choosing somewhere that's 30 minutes north. And so that's been another benefit that has compounded. And when you add up all those things, it makes that extra couple $100 an acre just pennies compared to the gains you get. So I think that's maybe not a reset button, but it's something that I don't know if we gave fully enough credit or credence to how important that was when we were starting from scratch. Obviously, if you've got a family farm that's 30 miles from town, but you don't have to get a mortgage like we did, like, do that, right? Like, obviously there are reasons to do other things. Or if you're going to have, livestock and it's a rapidly expanding area and you're concerned about neighbors complaining about manure down the line, there are other reasons to make that decision. Each one's site specific. But if you think that location has had a lot of unexpected benefits, not the least of which is let's say we do sell the farm, which is almost certainly what we will do at some point, whether it's, I mean, if one of our kids wants to do it, like in the future kids, whatever, like that's fine. But our plan this whole time is like, live the farm, love the life, love the farm, take care of the land, leave it better than we found it. And like, die on it and sell at the end. Like I have no delusion that like my future generations will walk on this hallowed ground. Like I don't have any of that sort of attachment to it. And so that's another reason. It's sort of just this cold economic reason, but another reason that having land close to town will always have more value down the line, no matter what it is that it turns into. Just that proximity, that location will always matter. So for people that are starting out or just thinking or whatever, I do think, like I said, not a reset button, but something that has been profound, how many different ways it has improved and benefited our life, our quality of life, and our business.
You farm with your wife. How do you divide roles in the farm, and how does it work farming with a partner?
Oh, it works great. We end each day with a high five, start each morning with a kiss, and just hug in the middle at lunch. I mean, it's perfect. Isn't that how it goes for everybody?
I mean, it sounds pretty great up there.
Yeah. No, it's, first of all, it is great. And it is worth noting that neither one of us, like we started this farm together. We dreamed up this farm together. We dreamed of what it would be and where it would be and what it would do together. So we don't have that same sort of like vision clashing that some other couples we know may have run into where they married into it or who knows what. So it's important to note that we dreamed this up together. That being said, our initial intention was that we would get things going. We have a 5-year plan. And by year 5, I would go full-time on the farm. We were both working full-time off the farm. By year 5, I would go full-time on the farm. And then if all was going okay, by year 10, Anne would go full-time on the farm.
Okay.
And then we'd have our sort of farm business and live our life. And that was kind of our plan. It was very sort of cautious, conservative, wanted to make sure we could pay our bills and things like that. And so 18 months in, I was like, I need to go full-time on the farm. Like it's growing faster than we thought. Things are going a little bit better than we thought. And really, I think I could make as much as I was making, at the grocery store, but just doing it on the farm or whatever. And so that's what we did, second year, spring, I was full-time on the farm, which sounds crazy to me because that was never the plan. Well, then we were like, okay, things are going well. So we're thinking maybe like a year or two, Anne would go full-time on the farm. In that time, she'd been teaching part-time at a couple of different places, and the local community college posted a full-time job teaching in her specialty in her field, which is digital art and design. And she was like, oh man, this looks cool, but like, our dream is the farm. And I was like, dude, I mean, the farm's not going anywhere. You can come home to it. You can work at it on the weekends, evenings, summertime, spring break. We'll have plenty of time to do that. But like, this is kind of your dream job. You've got a master's degree. Like, your dream job probably is not working for me, picking tomatoes or whatever the scenario may be. And so that was definitely one of those, like, you got to look out for number one type scenarios. We also thought there'd just be some resiliency in having diversified income stream, no matter what the arrangement. We just thought that would be safe, right? If farm has a bad year, at least she still has a job. If she loses her job, at least we're still building this business with purpose and intention. So that was really our approach. And that has its pros and cons. Pros definitely include the diversified income. I think we've really both enjoyed that. We've always been pretty even, Stephen. We've always sort of shared a bank account. We've always tried to each contribute the same amount to our budgets each month and things like that. But I think just that sort of peace of mind of having two different employers has been, I don't think that gets enough credit. There's that joke behind every great farmer is a wife or a spouse maybe, but typically a wife who works in town.
Yes.
And our arrangement really doesn't feel that way. Although I guess from an outside perspective, that's what it would be. But we both make good money. I'm just from the farm and she's from the job. And I think it also provides some domestic tranquility that we, her days aren't dictated by me and vice versa. We get to come together and enjoy the successes and work through the problems, but we're not like every second of every day struggling through it. And then we did, as I mentioned, we just had our first child last year who's now 9 months old. And I think that was something where if we were both full-time on the farm, that would have been incredibly disruptive. It still was, to be clear. Yeah. But if we were each 100% like an incredibly important part of the labor force, that would be really disruptive for the farm business and things of that nature. So the way our roles kind of work is once we knew we were going to start to try to have kids, we tried to phase Anne out of any of the like daily harvesting.
Mm-hmm.
We figured harvesting was probably not the best use of her time. Like, she's good at it. She's totally competent, but we could pretty aptly hire somebody to help with harvesting. It would be harder to hire somebody to handle our marketing and graphic design. It would be harder to hire somebody to know all of our customers and learn all their names and go to farmers market. So we sort of created this sort of core area of Anne's responsibility. And so she handles like all the graphic design and branding and marketing and things like that. She goes to farmers markets on Friday and Saturday with me. So we try to make sure the two of us are always at market. And then she has jurisdiction over all the honeybees on the farm. So she's the primary beekeeper. And then in terms of the vegetable end of things, it's really just in the greenhouse. She's great in the greenhouse. She can water the greenhouse. If I have to go out of town, she takes care of the greenhouse. And so she's not necessarily potting up and seeding like she used to, but she's watering, she's organizing, she's keeping tabs on things, she's training people how to do those things. And it kind of works out because most of the greenhouse work, most of the bees, most of the busy markets, those are all during the summer, and she's off, she's not teaching. And then the marketing can be done sort of evenings and weekends year round. And that tends to be that dynamic with her responsibilities. And then I basically handle like everything, which is fine. I mean, that I don't mean that in a bad way, but I tend to handle everything. All the employees, tend to report to me. And a year ago, I got kicked out of the kitchen, and now I have an office. So that was good for domestic tranquility.
Yes.
Once my office and everything wasn't, 10 steps away from the kitchen sink, domestic tranquility was a lot better in the house. So now I'm in an office, and that's been good too, because we knew we were going to have a child, and we wanted to have a little bit more separation of work and play. And I didn't mention at the beginning, but like we live in a pole barn that is also our wash pack. So like I cross a threshold and I'm in the wash pack. So creating the separation was kind of an important symbolic and physical step that now I have to commute, 20 feet to the other side of the barn to go to my office instead of like 3 steps away from the kitchen sink. That has helped separate things too. That's kind of how we divide the roles. And I think I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The farm permeates into almost every aspect of our life. And so though we do try to practice the separation, I think mentally we do have some separation. It permeates every aspect. And I can't sugarcoat that. It's hard to enjoy a Sunday knowing that the hoop houses and greenhouses might get too hot and we need to roll up the sides to ventilate, or we're trying to have a barbecue and we see a storm rolling in and we've got friends over, but I've got to run out and shut all the stuff so it doesn't blow away or whip the tunnel and stuff like that. So it definitely, it's good to be here for those moments, but it permeates a lot. And that's something that's one of the things that I don't know that you ever can know until you do it. And so I don't know what it's like, for the last 6 years, I don't know what it's like to sort of not worry about something related to the farm. And sometimes I fantasize about a really, really boring job that when I clock out, nothing matters. I could go join some after work rec league of some obscure sport like pickleball and then go to the bowling league after that and then come home and watch TV for 2 hours and just not think about anything. Sometimes I fantasize wow, what must that feel like? And then if we ever go on vacation, we get so bored of not doing anything so fast. We have literally come home early from vacations because we're just excited to go get things done and be productive. So I think we both have we have our own internal work-life fetish where we just can't even separate the two. We just love what we do. So I do think know thyself. Luckily, both of us are workaholics and we just are always being upfront with each other about trying to maintain the separation. But I can't deny that it's something that whenever we retire or sort of finish the farm, I really look forward to not worrying every day. That definitely affects me mentally. And I never knew that getting into it.
Yeah, it's a great responsibility.
Yeah, it is.
Switching up things up a little bit, what is the biggest mistake that you see beginning farmers making?
Not knowing their market. It's so simple. By the way, I see plenty of experienced farmers making that mistake too. But I think that's an equal opportunity mistake to be made. But I think just not knowing your market is one of the most important things that you can do. It sounds so simple, and I'm not saying it it's easy, you just go hire somebody to learn your market. I mean, it's not that black and white, but so often you see people have all these plans, these spreadsheets, whatever, to make this crop or make this business. And all the ways that they're going to get the fertility and they're going to get the irrigation system. And they built this cool structure that they saw on YouTube. And then they did this other thing from this grower friend they have. And like, they saw this thing when they were traveling in Belgium, and like, they do all this crap, and it's to produce like, I don't know, man, some obscure thing, Arctic kiwi. They're like, yeah, I got the perfect trellis set up. And it's like, sweet. I'm super happy for you. How many people do you know are going to like, what's the market demand for the Arctic kiwi? And like, what are they going to pay for it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, I mean, people already eat other kiwis. So like, we're just going to erode on the kiwi market, and like, it's local kiwi. And I'm like, right. But like, what's like, do you know that? Like, do you know that going into it? Did you try growing it in a small way first? And whether it's Arctic kiwi or just a new CSA farm in a saturated market, or whatever the case may be, I think that's the most common mistake by far. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, we grow microgreens. We stumbled into it, to be completely frank. It was just to help offset the propane bill. It spiraled into sort of a monster of its own, but like, we grew into that. You know, I talk to growers, they're like, I can't believe you grow 500 flats a week. Like, that's amazing. Like, crushing it. You're awesome. And I'm like, yeah, but dude, check it. Like, we started with 2 flats a week. Mm-hmm. And it was like freaking buckwheat. Like, it was such a dumb idea. But like it was 2 flats a week. And then it became 4. And then it became 8. And then it became 16. Mm-hmm. But like, it wasn't like, hey, we built this greenhouse, we bought these grow lights, we bought these tables, we got these hoses, we got this perfect packaging, we got all the soil, we got all the seeds, now we're going to grow 500 trays a week. And who are you going to sell it to? And for what price? And like, how will they know about it? So I think that's definitely by far the biggest mistake, is all these ideas and plans and things, but with no like, who's going to buy it. We tend to think people just inherently want it. And I think, I don't think starting a CSA where there's already CSA farms is a bad idea, but answer that question with, oh, well, these other CSA farms, they have really bad turnover and customers are dissatisfied, and I have a way to deliver more satisfying experience. Mm-hmm. Okay, now we're talking, right? Like, now you're talking about a strategic way to enter the market. But if you're just like, well, I saw that there were already 10, so I figured it must be working, so I figured I'd be the 11th. Not quite as good, right? Like, that's not maybe the best way to tackle that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I see that, as you said, I see that in every single farm out there. It's not just the beginning farms. It's all sorts of farms doing that.
Oh yeah, we've done it. I mean, we're not immune to it, right? I mean, we've grown things where it's just like, yeah, everybody's going to want that. And like, we saw it in the seed catalog. It looks awesome. And then you bring it to market and people are like, what's that? And you're like, it's awesome. And they're like, weird. And they just keep going, right? Like, it's not, there's not, like, ooh, swing and a miss.
Well, what year was it that Johnny's introduced kalettes? The cross between Brussels sprouts and kale.
Sure. Yeah. No doubt about it. And I think too, like, at some point you need to try new things, right? So it's not to say don't try new things. It's just to ease into it, right? So kalettes, obviously that could be interesting, but unfortunately kalettes came at a time when kale was fading. And so not only were like kale sales trending down, the idea of like mixing it with other stuff, it was just kind of like, Like, I even personally feel the same way about the honey nut squash. I know people think it's super cool, but like, a fancy chef was like, wouldn't it be interesting if we could have like a small butternut squash? It's like, yes, it would be interesting. Kind of like a baby carrot, except the baby carrot was value adding to an otherwise discarded product. And this is taking a lot of effort and conscious energy to make something that's smaller than something everybody already knows. And you're probably going to want more for it because it's not inherently easier to do or faster to produce or whatever. And so I think, like, yeah, if you have a chef who's saying, I want to buy 2,000 pounds of honey nut squash this fall, get it in writing, maybe get a deposit, but good. Okay, good. Then grow the honey nut squash. But don't just be like, oh my God, that is so cool. I never thought about a small squash. If you find yourself having that thought, like you never thought about it, probably safe to assume your customers have never thought about it either, because all of us spend a lot more time looking at seed catalogs and fertilizer, lists and thinking about things that most people in this country never think about, So if it's unusual to you, it's probably really unusual to your customers. Like that's important. Ann and I oftentimes bounce new ideas off of our parents. They of course don't know we're bouncing new ideas off of them, but they're both sort of, baby boomers, great parents, awesome people, but really sort of decent cross sections of sort of like an American mindset consumer, like they are very representative of our customer base. We do not have a big millennial customer base. We're selling primarily to boomers and things like that. So her folks are in the Midwest, my folks are on the East Coast. And like, if we've got this idea and share it with them, if they're like, oh yeah, that's great, which rarely happens. But if we do that, then we're like, okay, that's a home run. And then if it's something that we say and they're like, yeah, but why? Oh, because it's cool. Because it's like smaller, like more colorful than the other one. And they're like, okay, but like, does it taste the same? No, it like has like a different flavor. It's like, nah. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's a really powerful sort of test to go through that exercise. And I think, it doesn't have to be your parents, but just like find those people, they'll be honest, and don't present it as like this way awesome idea you have. Just casually mention it when you're like at the store, like, wow, interesting lettuce. Would you ever buy lettuce if it was like purple and green and spotted? And if they're like, no, that looks like it's sick, then you'd be like, oh shoot, I guess I won't get the, speckled trout lettuce or whatever it is.
Yes.
Right? So I think it's just like, sometimes we get too close to it, and having that sort of step back moment is really helpful.
No, I think you're absolutely true there. And I think one thing people need to realize is the consumer is inherently adverse to change. They do not want to try new things. And case in point, the Carmen pepper, which is my absolute, one of my top favorite peppers ever. But even after 3 years of introducing it to the market, our sales increased, but people still went after the blocky, square, red pepper, even though the flavor was not anywhere near what the Carmen pepper was.
No doubt about it. An even more obvious example, like Carmen pepper, first of all, I used to work for a grower who was obsessed with that pepper, and the customers were like, right, but do you have any bell peppers? I'm like, yeah, but this one's better. They're like, right, but what about the bells? I get the same thing amongst growers with Salanova. I think Salanova tastes phenomenal. I think it functions really well as a grower, but then I see many growers poo-poo it or say it's too expensive or say that, it's tough and they have a better blend of lettuces or whatever. Like, that's fine and good. But like, it looks and acts and functions like what most consumers are used to. So unless you want to go down the educational journey about why your lettuce mix looks, quote, different than regular lettuce mix, you might be able to save yourself a lot of the hassle and just grow something that looks like regular lettuce mix. Though that might not be like the exciting reasons why you got into it. This goes back to like, I just consider Spring Mix the vanilla ice cream of our farm. It's the most popular product. It requires no explaining. We just have to execute it well, consistently, and for a reasonable price, and it will always sell every week, no matter what. And so what a great little vanilla ice cream engine to have as part of our business. And then we can dabble in some of the specialty microgreens and these other more unique things. But that way we're not betting the farm on a bunch of specialty things. We've got this sort of bread and butter that's just like, looks like what people are used to. And they love that. They love being able to support local farms that produce things that are not weird. Like they love a good red tomato. They love a good spring mix. Even when we grow iceberg lettuce, they like a nice local iceberg lettuce. Like it is just considered like a good dark green cucumber.
Yes.
I mean, even just selling the weird Asian cucumbers, like they may produce great, but if most customers think they're weird, you're kind of missing the point. So yeah, you're right. Carmen pepper, Salanova, whatever the case is, you're absolutely right. Like if you can execute something that's already known to customers and do it well, you have a much higher chance of success than if you're trying to educate and break into the market.
So you've talked earlier about the people you hire and the system that you're using to onboard them in the spring. A lot of farms face challenges with hiring people. What kind of strategies are you implementing to find the right team members?
If I had a perfect strategy, I'd write a book, I'd have tons of money. It'd be like if I could predict the weather. I don't have that, right? But I do believe in being a human.
Yep.
And I think that that's where sometimes it breaks down right off the bat, right? Like we're hiring other humans. We're not trying to just hire a worker. We're not trying to just hire a harvester, a washer. like a cultivator. Like we're hiring other humans to do human work that we also have done before we had to hire them to help us do it.
Yes.
Right? Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, you're not just
absolutely,
hiring somebody to go stick in the field to pick weeds that you wouldn't pick yourself, right? Like, we're hiring other humans to do work that we've already done, that we now need more help to do the work to get it all done. And that means that we're going to treat them like humans. We're going to interview them like humans. We're going to pay them like humans. Like, they are not a disposable resource. Mm-hmm. We are in a very tight labor market, nationally and locally. Mm-hmm. Most places are trying to hire people where we are. And it's not like an extra 50 cents an hour is going to make that happen. There are plenty of places offering a lot more money than we are, but everyone kind of knows that it's a shit place to work. Because either like the owner's just using it as an extractive business and keeping all the money, or they're never there, or there's no training, or hours suck. Like, there's all these ways to make it suck. And so there's really a handful of ways that you can make it not suck. And it's amazing how receptive people will be to that. So that's like our first and foremost is like, we're hiring humans to help us do work that we already do. We're not like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not trying to hire somebody to do all the things we don't want to do. People pick up on that. Like they're not stupid. And they have other choices to go do other jobs that are more interesting than working on a farm, or at least not quite as stressful or strenuous. So that's like the first part. I think the second part is, once you find somebody who's good, don't screw it up. Don't be a dick. Reward them when they need rewarding. Give them praise. Show thanks. Be grateful. Treat them how you want to be treated. Yeah. Like, if they're having a tough day, recognize that. Acknowledge that. If they're having a bunch of hardships, maybe ask them what's wrong. I'm not saying you always should, right? But maybe bridge that gap or something. But like, they're not a disposable resource. They're your best asset. After the second year, the only reason we're where we're at is because of great people. Period. End of story. After year 2 on our farm, Ann and I could not do all the work. And so the only way we could keep growing was to add more people. And that's coming from 2 people who had on our original business plan, never hire employees. Okay. Like you're talking to 2 people who had seen enough bad work experiences on other farms that we thought the solution to not having a shitty work experience is to just not even deal with it. Yeah. And like, that's how sour we were on the experiences we saw as interns or volunteers or whatever on other farms. So treat them like humans and then keep them. If they're not great, let them fade away. That's fine. Yeah. Right? That happens. Everyone's not built for this. Yeah. But I refuse to accept that some people are just good and some people are just bad. How much did you train them? Did you listen to them? What makes them tick? What gets them excited? I just think that, life happens. People leave and come back for different reasons. But if there's somebody you want to keep, work to keep them. Figure out what makes them tick. If that's more money, see if there's a way to carve up more money. If they want to spend more time with their family and they'd rather work 4 10-hour days instead of 5 8-hour days, see if there's a way you can swing 4 10-hour days, right? I mean, these are different things that we've done with folks. We just got the Midwest Organic Vegetable Production Conference, like employee compensation survey results from that production conference in Madison. Yep. And we completed that. And there's some great line in there where like, one farm even offered paid maternity leave. And I'm like, oh, that's us. Yeah, where is it? Right, they're like paid time off. 26% of farms offered some kind of paid time off. One farm offered paid maternity and paternity leave for 1 to 3 months at 50% of gross pay. Right? Wow. That's us. We're the only ones doing that. Is it easy? Is it fun? Does it feel good to pay somebody 50% of what they were making already for them not to come to work? No, of course not. But they're an important part of our farm family. And wouldn't we want somebody to do at least that for us in the same position? Yes. I think that's one of those things where, as a small business, you have a chance to change the paradigm. I think as a nation, we've really screwed up some of the ways we view workplace benefits and relationships. And so while we can't offer a super flashy 401k, we can absolutely try to ease the burden of having a child, which is already an incredibly disruptive part of life. And so, like, as I talk to you right now, 2 of our 2 longest year-round workers, they've both been with us for 3 years. One just had a baby, and the other one's wife is due yesterday. So like 2 of our key members are not at work, but they're getting money and they're happy, and we've checked in with them. Their first question is, how is the farm? And we're like, that's ridiculous. Don't worry about the farm. How's the big, right? But like it's easier to retain. I mean, this is a commercial that's on the radio by us all the time. It's easier to retain than to retrain. Mm-hmm. And I think that is so true. Like each year that we keep another employee for another year, we build that much more sort of institutional knowledge. So when I talk about that spring training where we're sharing people how we do each thing, mm-hmm. This spring was the first spring where I had other people doing that too. Mm-hmm. I had one of our guys who's done deliveries for the last 2 years. He took a new person on all the delivery routes to show them how to do it. Not because I wasn't available or willing, but mm-hmm. sometimes you learn a lot by being the teacher. So wouldn't mm-hmm. that be great to have him? And then not only does he get to do that and build that relationship with that new employee, I'm then freed up to do something else. So those benefits compound on themselves. And, you know, I'm not ashamed to say that I think we pay people well. Mm-hmm. I wish we could pay them more, but you know, we have our upper end managers are making $21 an hour. And then most of our new hires start at 12. Mm-hmm. And there's exceptions to that in sort of both ways. But I think that that's reasonable. I think that we try to take it for what it is, but we're also really trying to find out what people value. If they mm-hmm. don't want more money, but they want a better schedule, we'll see if we can make a way for that to work. You know, there's mm-hmm. just different ways to do that. But you got to be a human. You got to take care of them. And you can't just complain and say workers, you know, there's no good workers. Workers suck. People aren't good. I can't find good people. I just refuse to believe that. Some of the people we've found have been the most interesting and hardest working people. And some of them from the most unexpected background, or even the first week of work, I'm just like, oh boy. And then a month in, I'm like, oh my God, like mm-hmm. they are great. They just needed to have the reins loosened up a little bit, or whatever the case may be. And so I think, but by the way, you got to spend time with these people to be able to learn that. You got to mm-hmm. be paying attention to that. Like you don't learn what makes people tick by just staying in your office and telling them to go along. That's where that come along comes into play. You know, mm-hmm. when you're working with them and see them, what gets them excited. And we have a mandatory 1 hour lunch. And as often as possible, I try to sit down and have lunch with them. You know, you learn about what gets them excited. Maybe they're into like, you know, I mean, I don't know. It could go a ton of different ways, but I think just showing that care and passion, I just think that matters. And I just try to treat them. I try to treat them the way I'd want to be treated. And anything that I didn't like at a previous job, I just try to correct those things and build from there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think some people are going to probably bristle at what you're doing and say, well, you know, it's really lucky that you have a business model that you can pay them this kind of money. But I think what you'd say back to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we intentionally set up our business because we want to be able to treat our employees this way on our farm.
You know, it's interesting. Probably what I'd say back to that is bullshit. I'd say we grew into this business and grew into those employees, right? Like, we never said we're going to start paying people $20 an hour. That's crazy, right? And now we're like, all right, that was great. Let's get them to 25. You know, I want to get everybody that's like here year round for multiple years up to $50,000 a year, because I feel like that feels like a reasonable amount of money to make. Mm-hmm. But people can bristle at that, and that's fine. I've had people say this to me, oh, you sell expensive stuff, so you get to do that. That's not it, man. That's not it. Just yesterday, you were complaining that I'm undercutting your product. You don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to say we're undercutting you and we're lying or we're overpaying or whatever. That's just not how it works. But what I can say is there's one reason why we've been able to pay people what I believe that they're worth. And that is being obsessively focused on efficiency in mm-hmm. everything that we do and ruthlessly getting rid of products and crops that don't make us money. Mm-hmm. So if something's not making us money, nobody's making money the whole time we do it. And we've built all of our enterprise budgets around a $25 an hour base wage. So every budget is based around $25 an hour since we started the farm, because I eventually said, I want to make $50,000 a year, work 2,000 hours. That's $25 an hour. So every enterprise budget has been based around $25 an hour. So if somebody's getting paid $12 an hour because they just started, great. They could be half as fast, because the budget is built around 25. So the production could be half as much, and we'll focus on getting them more efficient by the time they're making more. But this obsessive focus on efficiency and getting rid of poor performing crops and business enterprises is what lets us do that. Period. End of story. It's as simple as that.
Let's talk about your marketing. And you kind of touched on it throughout the interview, but what channels are you focusing? I hear farmers markets, I hear grocery stores, I hear some restaurants.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? So we're about 45% of our business is direct and 55% is wholesale.
Okay.
Of the total business, 45% is to retail, like to grocery stores.
Yep.
About 10% of our business is to restaurants. And then the remaining 45% is direct.
Gotcha.
Direct being primarily farmers markets. And then we also do an on-farm like transplant sale in the spring. That's the only time the farm's open for shopping, but that's the other period for direct is at the plant sale.
Gotcha. Now, I noticed too, you have some sort of, it's not like a CSA, but it's a membership to your farm, and it's a very low price. Tell me about kind of your reasoning behind that and what you found that, how that's worked out.
Okay, it's worked out great. And what we call it a membership, or it's like a loyalty program. It's like Costco, but you can't buy a pallet of bananas for $10. So it's like you get $12, gets you a reusable shopping bag that's branded, Bear Creek shopping bag. So for $12, you get that bag, and then you get 10% off all of your purchases with that bag for the next year. So it's $1 a month. You shop with the bag, you get 10% off. So if somebody spends $120, they save $12. So we tell them if you spend $10 a month, you'll break even. If you think you'll spend anything more than that, you'll come out ahead. The point is to reward loyalty. The point is to get a branded bag into the marketplace. The point is to have a targeted email list of people that are invested in our brand. The point is to give people a reason or a way to feel like they're buying into the farm without having to sign up for a whole CSA box of vegetables. The point is just to build that connection for a low price point, but a high impact. And so we have plenty of people who sign up for the membership and we never see them again. They just feel like they think they're going to come a lot and then maybe they don't come. And then we've got some people who sign up for the membership who spend over $1,000 a year. And so, yeah, sure. 10% of $1,000 is $100, and you could say we're missing out on $100, but you're missing the point. We've got somebody spending $900 a year with us who's really loyal to our brand. That's somebody we want to take care of.
Absolutely. If you could pick one, what would be your favorite farming tool?
I've answered this question before. My answer is still the same. Calculator.
Okay.
It goes back to what I said at the beginning. Lets you keep your job, lets you run the numbers, lets you do that enterprise budget, lets you see if it adds up. I take the same calculator I've had since high school to every farming conference. Just everywhere I go, I take that calculator in my briefcase because I just think, if somebody says something, I'm like, man, that just sounds too good to be true. Or that just doesn't add up. I can just whip that out and do it. And yeah, I mean, phones have calculators. I get it. But then people just think you're texting. So I think there's something a little more quaint about the Texas Instruments getting whipped out.
Yes. No, that and high tunnels would be my choice, but you're not allowed to pick two. So
yeah, but high tunnels, I've probably seen more people squander high tunnels than really execute. Like if those people had a calculator, they could really make sure that high tunnel is paying off. But if you just have the high tunnel and no calculator, you might just be operating in the dark and not knowing. But I agree, high tunnels have been a very powerful force on our farm, no doubt about it. But I watch a lot of people store stuff in the high tunnel, grow shitty crops in the high tunnel, slow crop, not replace the plastic, it blows away. I mean, just do all kinds of things in the high tunnel just because they can.
Yeah.
And I think this answer to that is a calculator that'll show them that they shouldn't. Even though they can, maybe they shouldn't.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give you that one. I completely agree with you. All right, one final question. Do you believe that now is the best time to be starting to farm? And if so, why?
No, I don't. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think now is a fine time.
Okay.
But I think like many business sectors, there could be like a groundswell of interest and then it sort of fades when, the shiny glitter sort of fades away. I might be biased, but I think when we started was a pretty favorable time. Economy was strong, a lot of programs in place to offer low interest or no interest financing. The FSA microloan program had just come on the scene. The NRCS EQIP program for hoop houses was on the scene. Farmers markets were booming. CSAs were booming. And I think there was a lot of interest. There was just this sort of national groundswell conversation around our food. And I think a lot of those things are still in place. Interest rates are trending up. A lot of things have become quite trendy. And I think when they become trendy, people stop asking why they're doing it and they just start doing it. I think you can see that in some of the online books or videos or courses or whatever. And I think it's great that people are offering all that content. I do think the content, for somebody that's just starting, it's great to be able to have access to that content. I think that there's a lot of it. Like, I think there's a little bit too much like model making or franchising. Like, there's a little too much, here's this recipe that works, go try it in your place. And I feel like that recipe might work, and it might work in your place. My concern is that at the point that you start adopting that recipe or whatever it is, you stop thinking about what is the right business for your marketplace in your place and time. Like what I said in the beginning, where people miss the mark on getting their market right. I think just seeing something that can be done doesn't mean that it should be done. And seeing that it can make money doesn't mean that it'll also make you money. And so we've had people reach out to us to say, oh my gosh, like, you're clearly killing it. I'd love to come like learn from you. And I sort of tell them, like, we're happy to share, but I want to ask you a few questions first, because I want to make sure you're not just trying to copycat. Not because I'm afraid of that, but because if you copycat without thinking, you risk setting yourself up for failure later on and not really understanding the root causes. So I'm concerned about that is one reason. I think on a national economic level, we're cyclically headed towards a downturn in the foreseeable future. That's fine. You shouldn't try to game the system, but I think that would be a reason that if you have like a day job, just hold on to that for the time being. And I think also that, you know, the vast majority of businesses fail within the first 5 years. And I think what we are going to see over the next 5 years is a lot of businesses that have started in the last 5 years are going to, even fail is a dramatic word, but they might fade away. I think there's a lot of people who thought starting a market farm was the right thing for them, and life happens and maybe they realize it's no longer the right thing for them. And so I do think that there's going to be a potential in the next 5 to 10 years to pick up a fair amount of equipment and materials and supplies and even properties for, you know, 50 cents on the dollar to what they're currently going for. So that's sort of on like the equipment end of things. And then I think on the land end of things, it's a well-known statistic that the vast majority of American farmland needs to change hands over the next 10 to 20 years. And I believe that there are some national policies that will probably come into play that are going to help that transition and really incentivize people to keep producing food. And so though it's not like I have an inside scoop on this, but I could easily foresee a future where there's some lower cost to entry to gain farmland from a retiring farmer that might reduce your barriers to entry. Because there's no doubt about it, the expense to get started is mind-boggling. And I think we owe hundreds of thousands of dollars to people. So not like people, like to creditors, banks, or FSA or whatever. But I'm saying that's not for the faint of heart, right? I mean, when you sign a loan with FSA, and you can right now, it's amazing that you can sign a beginning farmer FO loan with the FSA for up to $600,000 to get everything started at like 4% interest. So it's a subsidized interest rate, and it's a huge amount of money. That's 40 years. You'll be paying that back. I mean, like, try to predict anything in 40 years. Go 40 years before now. 40 years between 2019. We're talking, what is that, 1979?
Yep.
So in 1979, try to imagine the farming landscape today, and try to imagine what it was you would have been borrowing money for in 1979 that you'd still be paying for or just finally paying off in 2019. That's astounding. I mean, homes are usually 30 years, and everybody in America wants a home. So if you're talking about buying like a tractor, a new combine, or like a hoop house kit or whatever, like whatever it is you're thinking about, like, yes, there are some great programs to incentivize that and lower the barriers to entry. But this goes back to like, make sure you know what makes you tick. When we picked this property, we looked at it and said, even if we're not farming on this forever, this is a place where we could live and die. This is a place that resonates with like our soul, that no matter what we're doing here, we'll feel like we live in a good place and we like it. And so I think signing up for the 30-year mortgage for 75 acres in northern Michigan might have sounded crazy, especially with our business plan at the time. But also signing up for that and saying 30 years from now, we'll still want to live on property like this. And if we're not, somebody else will also see the value in this. And I think that's something that matters. So I think there's a rush to get started into farming right now. And I would love to see more people spend a little bit more time putting in the work on some existing farms and asking the hard questions before they get started, because a lot of people are just getting started and skipping the internship step. And I think the internship step is one place where a lot of farmers got it wrong by offering cheap or underpaid internships. And I think that makes people feel like, it's kind of like, why should I borrow money for an expensive college education when I could just start working and the math shows that I come out ahead? It's a little bit the same argument. Why should I go a whole year making almost nothing, working my ass off on a farm when I could just get started, learning myself? And the only thing that's more expensive than unpaid internship is making all those mistakes yourself. So I think a farm that is profitable has money to pay their workers. So find the farm that has the paid internship, the paid apprenticeship, the paid low-level entry worker. Find the farm that's running like a business that looks like what you might want to do, and make sure it's paid, because if they're paying their people, they're probably not out of money. And if they're not paying their people, it could be indicative of something else. It's not a guarantee, but it could be indicative of something else. And so you want to be in a position to learn from a place that's making at least some right decisions, so you can learn on their dime while making money, instead of rushing into it and making all those mistakes yourself with your own money, or worse yet, your own borrowed money.
Because there's nothing worse than having a lot of debt and finding out that the business is not for you.
Dude, debt's debt, right? Yeah. Just like at the beginning, I said, you got to make the money to keep the business going. If you borrow the money but stop the business, you still owe the money. Whether it's you or your children or your grandchildren or your spouse, like, you still owe that money, and it is cash dollars. It is not like, we'll sell you some extra potatoes and you'll cut our mortgage in half. Like, that is not how this game works. It is money. And so you pay back money with real money. So if you're going to borrow money, you better focus on making money.
Yeah. Well, Brian, that has been a fascinating discussion. So often through this interview, I shake my head yes, and I keep writing notes. I've got literally 4 pages of notes here that I'm going to use to pull the show notes out. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be a controversial interview, but that's the way I like them. And definitely got me thinking on some stuff. So I really appreciate your time here today, and I know our audience will as well.
All right, great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate what you're doing, and look forward to hearing it there.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and